Well, it is our time to rise. And today we're talking some about leadership and some just about life, because if you're a woman in midlife, you are a leader. We know that you are leading in your home, and if you're working in your workplace, and for sure in your community. And we're going to talk about the invisible weights we carry as women during this phase of life in particular. And there is a reason why we brought Kendra Tillman on to talk about this. And I want to say, we're going to get back to this in a second, but Kendra and I met at a retreat. We were on a shuttle bus from an airport to a retreat in Nebraska, which neither of us live in Nebraska, so a little random. Then we became closer friends when Kendra attended our Open Door Sisterhood retreat almost 10 years ago, probably 9 years ago, and have stayed friends. And then most recently, just a few weeks ago, Kendra joined a retreat that I was leading, and I invited her to come and speak and present. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, I want to tell you about Kendra. She is my friend, and she knows that I find her to be wise counsel in my life. We have gone through some midlife moments together. We have had some parallel launching of children in the world. And Kendra lives in Arizona. I live in Colorado. And sometimes it's nice to have a friend who isn't in the middle of your daily life, but is also going through a parallel process. So she has been that for me over the years. She is also quite qualified to be speaking on leadership. She is a certified life and executive leadership coach, a healthy marriage mentor, and a published author passionate about helping leaders thrive. As the founder of StrongHer.me coaching and consulting, she supports individuals and teams in uncovering their unique strengths to lead with purpose, authenticity, and confidence. And I just got to experience her in this professional realm with a group of leaders that I was working with. Kendra also co-leads a marriage ministry with her husband and college sweetheart, Daniel, and they have been in the podcast in the past, speaking specifically on marriage. And they do this with their two dearest friends, because we like to do things in community, where they equip couples with Christ-centered tools to strengthen their relationships. So I would say Kendra's passions really fall in the buckets of leadership and marriage. And her life is evidence of that, because that's where she gives her time and her talents. So that's always great when your passions and your actual life match up. And I would say that is true of Kendra. And I think that also speaks to her authenticity, which is why I wanted to invite her this couple of weeks ago to this event in Arizona that I was doing through my job. And I realized I don't talk about my job very much on the podcast. And so I thought I might give a little example of what I do for my day job. I work for an organization called Project 127, which is based on the scripture verse from James 1:27 that calls us as believers to practice true religion by caring in part for the orphan. And in U.S. culture, we consider the orphan at my job as kids who need the protection of a family. And so those are children in foster care. And part of what I do is I run a network of executive directors of ministries around the country that do similar work. And we come together to brainstorm, to support each other. And every year I run a retreat where executive directors come for 4 days. And this year we did it in Scottsdale, Arizona. So when I knew the location, I said, I want Kendra. So months ago, I got on her calendar and I said, would you come and speak to leaders? And I didn't even know exactly what I wanted you to talk about. I just knew that God was saying, Kendra needs to be part of this because of your temperament and your spiritual depth and your understanding of leadership stresses. And as we talked, it became clear that you were to talk about this idea of the invisible weights we carry. So she came and did a workshop for us. She was by far one of the favorite elements of the retreat. And so I thought, why not bring Kendra here today to talk with you? I don't want to hold back on this treasure of a woman and this treasure of wealth. So very long introduction, but I could keep going for hours. Please welcome my friend Kendra Tillman to the podcast.
That's the way you want to be welcomed. And,
Oh,
like when I was listening to you talk about that too, all the different connections that we have is just so amazing to me. What is the tool that you and I use to talk to each other back and forth?
Oh,
It's
Voxer. Mm-hmm.
Voxer. Yeah, like we have a lot of hours of Voxers like going like back a few years. Like
Mm-hmm.
remember I think we probably Voxed the most during the pandemic. Whatever time frame you want to put that into, we Voxed a lot during that time. And I actually feel like that is when we became the closest, was during that
Mm-hmm.
time. So yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
had some honest back and forth. And
hmm
when I think about why can I be so honest with you?
hmm
It's because you are trustworthy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just foundational to relationships. And it's
Yes.
foundational to leadership today as we talk about the stress that is put on women in this phase of life. That if we compromise that trustworthiness,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of other things get compromised as well. We were even talking about this right before in context of parenting, right? And
Yes.
teaching our kids about honesty and how to be
hmm
an adult and
hmm
live out of integrity. So, I mean, we just talk about it all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to just start with this idea of the
hmm
visible and invisible weights of leadership. That's what you talked
hmm
about at the retreat a
hmm
few weeks ago. Can you make a distinction for us about what are visible weights that we carry and what are invisible, and give some examples of each?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? To me, one of the funniest examples of this is I think this is really where I started to even notice or recognize that there was this invisible weight before I knew what it was called, what people called it, invisible labor, mental
Mhm.
load. I didn't even know that that's what it was called, but I saw this meme. This was so many years ago. This is more when people used to pass around different cartoons and things like that. And so it was in a magazine and it said, a husband says to his wife, I'm going to bed. Or a wife says to her husband, I'm going to bed. And then she gets up, she washes dishes, she takes the dog outside, she folds the clothes for the week, she makes sure the lunches are packed, she takes a shower. Like it just lists all these things that she does. And then she finally lays in the bed. And even then, she's not asleep, right?
Mhm.
Then it says the husband decides, oh, I'm going to bed. And he goes to bed, right?
Mhm.
And I just thought that was so funny when I first saw that. And I'm sure at this point, lots of people have heard that analogy and
Mhm.
heard people talking about that. But to me, it was like, okay, there's something there where we all recognize that there is something that is happening in terms of how we're both approaching men and women, or just people in general, leaders
Mhm.
or not leaders, whatever you
Mhm.
are, how we are approaching all these things that are happening in our lives every single day. And so, in terms of the question about what is the distinction between what's visible or invisible, so the visible responsibilities that we have, or the visible weights that we have, are our responsibilities, the things that people can actually watch or that they can notice, or things that are very obvious or tangible, right? Those physical things that they can
Mhm.
see that are happening. But the invisible is what is fueling the visible. So it's the weight that's on your heart, your mind, the things where you feel like you have all this responsibility, where people are depending on you when they need you to be the one to get this done. It's the things that are happening spiritually. It's the things that are happening emotionally. It's the thinking that you're doing about it. Like all those times where you are coordinating mentally, okay, this person needs to be here at this time. Oh, I need to make this doctor's appointment
Mhm.
because this thing is coming up on this date. And so it is all of those different things that people can see or not see is the visible, or the things that people can see is the visible, and the things that they can't see is the invisible. And
Mhm.
an analogy, because I like to use analogies, that comes to mind is we all know that a car runs on gas, but we don't visibly see all the ways the gas is fueling the car, right? So we go to the gas station, we put the gas in, but then there's something that happens that we don't see. And so that is how we can think about this visible versus the invisible.
Mhm. Yeah, and the gas analogy is so good because
Mm-hmm.
what are we running on? That power that's happening if you're not putting
Mm-hmm.
enough or
Mm-hmm.
quality fuel into your vehicle, then it
Yes.
stops working.
Yes.
And probably that's when we hit burnout, or we have a physical meltdown. Our body stops responding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but leaders really responded well to this. I think
Mm-hmm.
in a job situation, for example, you would
Yeah.
have a job description. These are
Mm-hmm.
the things that everybody knows you are responsible for. And the unseen things are the, oh, yes, but in order for those things to happen, I
Mm-hmm.
have to do all of these other things that maybe
Mm-hmm.
nobody else knows about. So
Mm-hmm.
that feels really clear within a workplace environment, or at least
Yeah.
more clear when you have an actual job description. But for a lot of our listeners, much of their time is not with a job
Mm-hmm.
description, like an actual one. Can you describe or give us examples of other forms of leadership and the types of weight that women, especially in midlife, might carry?
Yeah, I always think back to whenever somebody asks me about who is a leader, who can call themselves a leader, what defines a leader, I always think about the definition. I think this is from John Maxwell about the fact that leadership is influence.
Hmm.
And I think anywhere you are influencing people, you are a leader. We are all leading in some capacity in our lives. And the question we can ask ourselves is, who am I influencing? Like, who is looking up to me? Who is seeking me out for guidance or support? And so, for someone who is a parent, your children are looking up to you. They're seeking you out for guidance and support. If you are a teacher, the students that you teach, if you're a coach, the students that you're coaching, when you are in any area of your life where you can see that people are looking up to you and you are having some type of an influence on their life, then you are in a leadership position. And so to me, that means every single one of us in some type
Hmm.
of capacity in our lives is leading, even children, right? Even to me, even children can find themselves in a leadership position.
Yes. Well, that is true.
Mhm.
And I would say some of the weights I hear people
Mhm.
carrying in
Mhm.
midlife, as you said,
Mhm.
parenting is one. And even if your kids aren't at home, there's
Yes.
that weight that you carry. We
Yes.
just did an episode on parenting young adults a few weeks
Mhm.
ago. Um, but now caring for parents is a weight
Mhm.
that we carry, for our spouses, for our own physical health that may
Mhm.
be changing. Our bodies are changing. All of
Yes.
those stresses of midlife may be invisible weights. There may be some visible weights that people know you're taking
Mhm.
responsibility for some things, but
Mhm.
a lot of it, dang, it really feels invisible.
Yes.
What do you see as the unique elements of midlife and women specifically around this idea of invisible weights?
So to me, I think midlife is a time of reflection, right?
Hmm.
Because we have lived, even though I know as believers, I'm just say in my faith community, we want to believe that we will live to be 120 years, right? That
Okay.
was the conversation God and Moses had. And so sometimes people say that. But in general, I think we can all agree that we reach this point in our lives where we recognize, oh, I've lived half of my life already. And so that really makes us get very reflective about, what do I want now in my life? What is important to me now? And if you see the arc of your life as a journey, midlife is a point where we pause and we look at how far we've come, and we think about, okay, well, what do I want to embrace from that part of my journey, that first half of my journey? And then what do I want to do differently in this second half of my journey? You mentioned a lot of the big ones. So one of my thoughts is, there's this visible weight of our bodies changing. I truly did not realize how much my body was going to change. Like, before I got to this point in my life, I always have heard women talking about how much your body changes. I feel like I was truly ignorant about how much the role hormones play in how you feel and all the different ways that your body is functioning. And so to me, part of that invisible weight is now having to relearn who you are as a woman when your body feels so different than maybe it even felt 10 years ago. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that in the last 10 years, I can see, wow, my body changed so much. And that is something that is always on my mind, because things that I did not have to think about before, I'm having to think about now. Like, how many vitamins am I taking? How much sleep am I getting? Like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think about how much sleep I was getting before this time in my life. And so, like, to me, that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. I think about how much our relationships
Mm-hmm.
changed. And I want to talk specifically about friendships. To me, my friendships have been more challenging to maintain now in this season of my life than they were in previous seasons of my life. I have spent a lot of mental energy thinking about, why is it so different? Like, why
Mm-hmm.
does it feel harder to me to maintain these friendships and these bonds? And there's a few different things that I have been thinking about, and I would love to know what you think too, Alex. Is one of the things I've thought about is that I spent so much of my first half of my life orchestrating things, things and people. Okay, I want my kids to know the Lord, to be in relationship with Him, and have this deep relationship with the Lord. And so I made sure they went to church. We did Bible studies. They went to youth camp. We read our Bibles together as a family. We did devotionals. So there is so much energy that I spent orchestrating, trying to
Mm-hmm.
make sure they're in the right place at the right time and all this. And then the same was with my friendships, is that, okay, I made sure we're going out to dinner, we're connecting, like we're not letting too much time pass. There's just a lot of orchestrating that I was doing. And I realized in the last 3 years how exhausted I became
Mm-hmm.
with all of the orchestrating that has to happen, the work that has to happen in every single relationship, my parenting, my marriage, my friends. And sometimes I think it feels easier to not put that work in. You just want one relationship that doesn't feel like we have to put some work in to keep this together. And so that's part of what I have felt, is like, okay, so what does it look like now to build those friendships? What does it look like now to cultivate those friendships so that we are not drifting apart, so that we are staying connected? Is
Mm-hmm.
that something that you can relate to?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about this idea of it's a time in life to pause and
Mm-hmm.
reflect on, okay, what do I want to carry
Mm-hmm.
forward in this
Mm-hmm.
part of my life? And as I don't know if this is because we're Americans and this is
Mm-hmm.
cultural, but I think we tend to look forward, look forward, look forward without stopping long enough to
Yeah.
look back and
Yes.
say, I like what you said at the beginning, that we can see how far we've come.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in midlife, and I'll speak for myself, I think I focus on the loss
Mm-hmm.
and the change, and
Mm-hmm.
I get panicked because instead of appreciating how far I've come, I hone in on what I'm losing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to friendship, for example, to say, okay, I am a more mature friend. I'm a more self-aware friend than I was
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago. I may not be as available as I
Mm-hmm.
was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I want to carry forward? And say out loud, what do I want my friendships to look like? And then what is the work I need to put in to do
Yeah.
that? So you also mentioned something about being
Mm-hmm.
exhausted
Mm-hmm.
by all this orchestrating.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
How do we manage all of these weights? So we're doing the reflecting. Let's assume
Mm-hmm.
at this point, like, okay, that's
Yes.
step one, is to pause long enough to look back,
Mm-hmm.
recognize in a positive way how far we've come, and then consider what we want to take forward with us. How do we do that in a way where we're managing these weights in a sustainable way and not one that just feels like, okay, I'm just going to try harder at the
Yes.
hamster wheel?
Yes. Yeah. So the thought that comes to mind when you ask me that is thinking about what does it look like now? So
Mm-hmm.
I know that everybody is not the same. I am a person who I take a lot of comfort in sameness, in things being more of like what they used to be. So whatever habits and routines I have established, I take a lot of comfort. I find a lot of peace in things staying the same. And so one of the things that I've had to learn is that maybe it's time to reinvent what this looks like now for this season of my life, right? And so you're in this new season. What does friendship, what does parenting, what does your marriage, what does how you take care of your body, what does it look like now? Like based off of what you know about yourself, what you've learned about yourself over the first half of your life, what does it look like now? Like how could that change? Like what would need to be different now?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is part of how I have started to lighten the load of that, is really focusing on that this is a new thing. We're in
Mm-hmm.
a new season. And so because we're in a new season, that means that I'm going to have to do things a little bit differently. So in coaching and in therapy, when we meet with a client, we know that there will be like this, what we call a presenting problem.
Mm-hmm.
So presenting problem is the thing that's causing you an irritation or discomfort. And so you know that there's like some underlying issue. And so this season of our lives can be a time of exploration so that we can really get to the heart of the weights that we are carrying. And the weight of the mental load is not just our feeling. It's not just a feeling that we have. It really is these tangible consequences sometimes that we experience as a result of this. And so to me, in order for us to really manage the weight, we have to be willing to go deeper and not just
Mm-hmm.
what do I see that's happening up here on the surface. I need to go a little bit deeper underneath and say, okay, I'm in this new season with everything that I've learned. What do I want this new season of my life to look like? And just give ourselves permission to just go on the journey of this rediscovery process. And I don't know, like when people hear me say that, that may feel like work to them. And it may feel like this is going to take a while. But I'm recently my husband and I have been meeting with a couple who are newlyweds. And I'm talking specifically to the wife. And as I'm listening to her talk, I can see so much of how she is approaching life is very similar to how I approached life when I was her age, when I was in her stage and her season. And I think about all the years that I have spent that got me to where I am now. And so I'm mentioning that because yes, it is a process. Yes, I don't think there's any quick fix to it. I think it really is a willingness to go through this process of rediscovery. Like in the first half of your life, you're discovering. And then I think in the second half, we are rediscovering, okay, what do I want to keep? And what do I want to, like, what do I want to purge? And what do I want
Mm-hmm.
to keep as I move forward?
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask a
Mm-hmm.
follow-up question to that,
Yes,
because I
yes.
think you're landing in that
Mm-hmm.
decision point of what do I
Yeah.
want to keep, what do I want to purge.
Mm-hmm.
I think we often carry things that are not ours to carry.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how in that process, right? That might be the understatement of the year for
Mm-hmm.
women in our phase of life, that we are carrying things for so many people that
Mm-hmm.
they may have asked us to, but
Yep.
they maybe haven't.
Yep.
And yet that's the invisible weight that we are taking on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's visible, like the woman who's doing her bedroom routine is very different than her husband's because she feels like it's my responsibility to get all these things done. But there's also the emotional component to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we distinguish between what is ours to carry and what is not?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that some of it is trial and error
Mm,
of us carrying something and seeing that, oh, this is creating additional stress in my life. It is causing me a lot of pain, distress, tiredness, weariness, and then learning that, okay, that's not mine to carry. Also, I think that we have wise counsel, we have people in our lives who can very clearly sometimes see when we are carrying things that are not ours to carry, but we won't listen to the counsel that they are giving us to release certain things. And I think that one of the reasons why we do hold on to things that are not ours to carry is because they give us a source of comfort and security,
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you feel like you have some form of control.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel like you will be able to get what you want out of what is happening if you are the one who is in the driver's seat. And I think that part of what we have to learn is we have to learn how to let go of the things that we are holding on to so tightly, so that we can empower the people around us, and so that we can also give ourselves a break, so that we
Mm-hmm.
can give ourselves an opportunity to breathe. I mean, it's like there is so much I want to say, I could say. I just know that I am someone who has spent a lot of my life trying to get it right, trying to do the right thing, trying to be helpful. And I have gotten a lot of how I see myself in how much I can do to help other people. And being able to, in this point in my life, take a step back and not do so much, it has been hard, because we value people who are doing, people who are rescuing, people who are helping, but we don't necessarily hold that same value for people that are resting,
Mm-hmm.
people that have taken a step back and have said, okay, I know I'm at my limits, I'm at my capacity. It has not been an easy process to release that need for that validation that comes when you are the one who is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that cultural
Mhm.
value that we hold.
Mhm.
Again,
Mhm.
probably partly American culture, partly
Mhm.
just human nature, that we get value from saying, I have accomplished all of these things
Yep.
today.
Yep.
And as our roles are changing, we, I think, hit panic mode a little bit. Like, oh
Yes.
no, I'm not as needed here.
Yes.
And therefore, I must not be as valuable here.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering about this idea of laying some things down, the things that we need to lay down and how we determine that. Are there some questions, maybe about control,
Mhm.
that we can ask ourselves that will help us determine this is something I actually need to not carry right now? Do you
Mhm.
have any ideas on questions that women could ask themselves?
Yes, I have a few different thoughts about questions that we can ask ourselves. I would say one of the questions is like, what is the reward that you are getting when you hold on to this? Because there is a reward
Mm,
that you are getting, which is why you're having a hard time letting go. And how can you start to release some of that control that you need to have, that you feel like you need to have, depending on what the circumstances are? What would happen if you drop the ball? Like,
mhm,
I know we have a big fear of dropping the ball, but what happens if you drop the ball? Who will come and pick that up if you drop the ball? And
mhm,
if nobody picks it up, will everything still be okay? Another question that's coming to mind is, what is the highest and best use of your time? Some of the things that we're holding on to, we are holding on to them because they give us that reward, like that need, like you said, that need that we have to be needed. And so we're trying to do so many different things where there is a best and highest use of our time. And we have to look more at that and be willing to release the busyness that we
Mm-hmm.
are, that kind of defined, I think, maybe that first half of our life, that
Mm-hmm.
that busyness, that was an expectation, the fact that we learned over functioning as a way of life, and
Mm-hmm.
we were rewarded for it professionally. We got validation for it. We got praise from our, the people that our friends, we got it from our family members. It gave us a sense of control and security. And we have to be willing to really reevaluate what some of those things are. And the last thing I would say is, where are you insecure?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of this change that starts happening right around this time in our lives, like many years ago, I heard somebody talking about, when we talk about people being insecure, I think there is a certain level of shame that comes with being insecure when we think about it as, oh, you're needy, or you're not confident, or you don't have self-worth. That's not what I mean when I say insecure, or where do you need security. What I'm saying is, we attach ourselves to things that make us feel secure. And I think that one of the things that we are learning and God is showing us in this season of our life is that we need to be secure in Him.
Mm-hmm.
And because everything around us is changing. So what is the one thing you can hold on to that isn't changing? God. He's the only
Mm-hmm.
thing that can make us feel locked in. I think, like, I'm getting a picture in my mind of like being at the fair and being on one of those rides that just, it spins you around and around and around, and you're constantly trying to grab for something secure to hold on to. And so God is that security for us.
Yeah. I would add
Mm-hmm.
this idea of what is my highest and best use of my time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, as some of our responsibilities are changing, we
Mm-hmm.
find that we may have more time than we used to, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you've spent a lot of time driving kids places and being
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
center of a home of many people, and those many people are starting to need you less
Mm-hmm.
and leaving. Another way to perhaps look at this is, what is my highest and best use of my energy?
Yes.
Because when it comes to relationships, I think maybe we have some relationships in our lives that
Mm-hmm.
suck us dry, and it doesn't take a lot of time for them to do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we give the relationship itself some minimal time, but yet we still ruminate and give so much of our energy to that, so
Mm-hmm.
that our best selves are not available in a way that we want them to be to people we love.
Yeah.
And so this idea of, where am I giving my energy to? And I don't mean that to sound like woo-woo energy, but just our emotional capacity,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
and can be sucked dry. I mean, I can't think of another way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way to think of it too. If you're feeling like some of the invisible weights I'm carrying are not just things I'm doing, but the way that I am interacting with certain people in my life.
Mm-hmm.
This relationship, the way it's going, is no longer serving me. As I
Mm-hmm.
pause, reflect, and look back and think about what I want to carry forward, the way we're doing things is not going to be sustainable. So I've been thinking a lot personally just about my capacity for energy, and my capacity is changing. I am
Mm-hmm.
not able to do the same just general energy things that I could. I can't bounce back the same way I
Yeah.
could 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
I can totally relate to that. Is I don't even want to. There is literally some things that I used to crave in terms of accomplishments, achievements, and I do not even have the desire to put in the energy and the effort that is required to make that happen at this point in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And that is such a freeing place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's our goal, right? When
Mm-hmm.
we look back and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well done. Well done in these areas. And we don't have to keep going at this pace. And in fact,
Yeah.
we probably can't. And so we'll just be frustrated if we're trying to put that on ourselves. Well, what are your final words to our listeners as they consider the invisible weights that they are carrying? What do you have for them?
I would say this to me, so much of what I was sharing has to do with the journey that I have been on myself.
Mhm.
As I am, like, my life is shifting in ways that I really did not expect it to shift and change. And learning how to lighten the load has been some of the good work that I feel that I have done in my life. And just looking at, what is it that you really want now? The first half of our life, we devoted so much of our time to what everybody else needed from us, including our children, if we have spouses, other family members, our friendships. And this season of my life has really been less about doing. And I'm saying that as if I've only been in this season for a year. I'm wanting this next half of my life to be less about the doing and more about the being. And yeah, so I think my encouragement to women that are listening right now is, have you given yourself the chance to pause and look back and see what you have learned about the life that you have lived up until this point, and what do you want now, as you move forward? What do you sense the Lord is leading you and guiding you for this new season of your life? Like, what looks different about that?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you. And if listeners want to connect with you, why don't you tell us a few ways that they can?
My husband and I, we lead, like, as she mentioned at the beginning, we co-lead a marriage ministry with another couple, and we have for the last 10 years. And we would love to do more speaking and marriage events, relationship events, where there's going to be couples or singles. It doesn't matter. If you are looking for a speaker, if you know your church is looking for a speaker, we would love to connect with you over that. Our Instagram for our marriage ministry is livingwellmarriage.com. But you could also connect with me on LinkedIn at Kendra Tillman. So it's very
Mhm.
easy. I'm Kendra Tillman on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with you there. We really and truly believe that marriage, like, you don't have to endure your marriage. You
Mhm.
should actually be enjoying the relationship that you have. We like each other. We actually still like each other almost 29 years into marriage. We still like each other, and we want to do our part in terms of supporting other couples who are on that journey. And so we would love to connect with anybody who is interested in having us come and talk to their group about that.
Mm. Well, thank you. And what a gift you would be to any church or group to offer your wisdom together in that regard. Well, thank you, Kendra. Thank you for being here today.
All right. Thank you for having me.